Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a place where books breathe, stories bite back, and silence doesn't mean peace, it means the library is listening. You're walking through the ruins of ancient Nineveh, brushing past columns still blackened by time, when you notice a strange breeze carrying the scent of wet clay and burnt sage. There's no one around, but you feel watched, like the stones themselves remember more than they let on. You're not here to visit just any library. This is the House of Ashurbanipal, the oldest known royal library in history, built by a king who didn't just collect stories, he devoured them. And tonight, it's your turn to be swallowed whole. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments, curious where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The palace gates are ajar, even though this place should have crumbled entirely over 2,000 years ago. Moonlight spills over carved lamassu, those hybrid guardians with the face of a man, the body of a lion, and wings wide enough to shadow your entire neighborhood. One eye seems to follow you, the other winks. You step inside. Dust puffs up with each footfall, and your sneakers feel absurdly modern against the baked brickwork. There's a hush, so deep it presses on your ears, and the temperature drops 5 degrees as soon as you cross the threshold. A thin path of crushed reeds and soot leads you down a corridor lined with cracked reliefs. Scenes of war, scribes, lions mid-roar. The lion's mouth is open in stone, but you swear you hear a growl echo behind you. You quicken your pace. That's when you notice the sign above the archway ahead. Meaningless, unless you read Akkadian, which, tonight, you apparently do. It translates roughly to, "Here, even memory is kept on a leash." You enter the library. It doesn't look like a place of reading. Not at first. There are no shelves, only rows of stone cubbies stacked high with clay tablets, each stamped with wedge-shaped cuneiform marks. You reach for one, and your fingers tingle. The clay is warm. Alive? It pulses faintly in your palm. You place it back, gently. There's movement at the edge of your vision. A flicker of fabric. A shadowy figure? You turn. No one. But a tablet has shifted itself from one cubby to another. Okay then. Suddenly the air changes again. You're not alone. A man sits at the far end of the hall, head bowed over a stack of tablets. Robes like ink, beard like coiled script. Fingers stained with ochre and ash. When he looks up, it's with eyes that reflect firelight you can't see. "Ah, visitor," he says in perfect unaccented English. "Finally." You try to speak, but he raises one finger. You must first offer a story. That is the price of passage. Before you can ask passage to where, the room shifts. The tablets rearrange themselves in a blur, stone scraping on stone. You're standing in a different part of the library now. No exit in sight. The man is gone. But the whispering begins, not voices, the tablets, thousands of them, murmuring names, events, dates. Some in monotone, others frantic and panicked. One speaks directly into your ear. The flood began on the 4th day. There were no survivors. You drop it, and the whispering ceases. You want to leave, but the library isn't done. A tablet slams to the ground in front of you, uncracked. You feel compelled to read. The marks twist themselves into English in your mind. The one who disturbs the order must provide new order. You don't like where this is going. Above you, the ceiling ripples. Yes, ripples, like a heat mirage. Scenes from the past flicker across the mud brick. Assyrians flaying their enemies, blurred thankfully. Astronomers charting eclipses with jaw-dropping precision. A child being taught to copy the signs for God, king, famine, doom. Then, oddly, your own face, reflected in a puddle of blood. That part you try to ignore. You stumble backward. The tablet you dropped has reformed and is crawling. Yes, crawling. Back to its place like a clay centipede. You know what this means. This library doesn't just collect stories, it records them, and now you're in it. Historians still argue whether Ashurbanipal himself ever physically entered the library more than a handful of times. Most say he ruled from afar, sending scribes to collect works from Babylon, Susa, even Egypt. But the law says otherwise, that he walked these halls in dreams, that he inscribed his enemies' screams into the clay, that if you say the right prayer or the wrong one, He'll appear to evaluate your narrative worth. You hear breathing now. It's not yours. And then the door, the one you thought you came through, slams shut, sealing itself with a hiss of steam and the grinding sound of wet stone. Yeah, that shouldn't be happening. One of the clay tablets drops from its cubby and lands at your feet with a sound too heavy for its size. Its message is simple. Start from the beginning. You swallow hard. A lamp ignites in the corner. Its flame dances like it's waiting for a tale. So go on, speak. Because until you do, this place won't let you rest. And remember, Ashurbanipal is listening. You clear your throat, which feels like the loudest sound you've ever made. The flame in the corner responds with a quick flicker, as if impatient. You're not sure what kind of story this place wants, but something tells you that a retelling of your last vacation isn't going to cut it. Then again, you don't get to decide, because the library has already chosen the next scene. The walls shift again, not physically, more like conceptually. One moment, you're standing in the grand hall, the next, you're peering into a stone chamber, deep red in tone, with a crackling brazier and slabs of tablet-stuffed niches that curve inward like ribs. At the centre, a throne of ebony and bronze. No one sits in it, but his presence is everywhere. Ashurbanipal. You've heard the name, probably in the kind of textbook where every king seems to have a beard and an ego. But this one had more than just a crown. He had curiosity. He was a rare creature in a world of conquest, a warrior with a library card. Born around 685 BCE, Ashurbanipal was the last great king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, reigning during a time when Nineveh was the centre of the known world. Most kings collected gold or concubines. Ashurbanipal collected knowledge. Thousands of clay tablets from across Mesopotamia were copied, stolen, traded, and archived under his orders. You're standing in the middle of what he called his palace of tablets, his legacy carved in stone, and he could read every word. Sumerian, Akkadian, Aramaic. No problem. The guy was basically a walking Rosetta Stone. While other kings needed scribes to explain celestial omens or medicinal recipes, Ashurbanipal read them himself. He wasn't just curious, he was obsessive. His own inscriptions brag about it. I, Ashurbanipal, learned the wisdom of Ea, all the arts of the scribal craft. Which sounds impressive until you realise that the wisdom of Ea involved a lot of liver divination, and dreams involving exploding goats. But still, you have to respect a ruler who not only conquered Egypt, but also took notes about it. And now, the library seems to expect you to appreciate that legacy. A tablet lifts itself from the niche beside the throne and floats toward you. You don't question physics anymore, you just read. The writing animates as your eyes follow it, and suddenly you're no longer just reading, you're experiencing it. You're back in Ashurbanipal's youth. He's a boy prince huddled in a palace chamber surrounded by senior scribes. No toys, only styluses and clay. While his brothers are outside practicing spear drills, young Ashur is struggling to memorize the sequence of lunar omens that determine royal legitimacy. Because nothing says bedtime story like, if the moon is surrounded by a halo and the east wind blows, the king shall fall. That's the Assyrian version of Ring Around the Rosie. Historians still argue whether Ashurbanipal's scholarly training was his father's idea or a sign that the prince was never meant to rule. After all, he wasn't the eldest. He was the brainy backup plan, until his brother, Shamash Shumukin, drew the short straw and got sent off to rule Babylon instead. The rivalry between the brothers? Oh, we'll get there. But right now, young Ashur is proving himself by reciting ancient spells with barely a stutter, drawing complex astrological charts, and solving riddles that make modern escape rooms look like kindergarten. He becomes a master of the scribal arts. He doesn't just know the myths, he can edit them. Quirky tidbit time. Ashurbanipal once had a demon handling manual copied from a broken tablet, buried in a ruined temple, then personally annotated the thing. Imagine a king leaving notes in the margin like, "This demon's recipe doesn't work," or "Never summon on an empty stomach." You drift deeper into the scene, and the shadows around you thicken. The room gets warmer, or maybe it's the weight of all this recorded ambition pressing down. The floating tablet continues. I, Ashurbanipal, heard the tablets whisper in the night. The gods teach by dream and omen. The scribe must never sleep too deeply. Your eyes feel heavy, and for a second you wonder, are you still standing? Or have you slumped beside the throne, head tilted into some dreamless half-sleep? Then the brazier crackles sharply. Something has changed. There's a new smell, charred cedar and ink. The throne is no longer empty. You blink, and sitting before you is the king himself, Ashurbanipal, or rather, an echo. His skin is like aged parchment, taut over bones. His beard is ink-dark and intricately curled. He does not move like a man. He moves like an idea given form. "You read well," he says. His voice is layered, like multiple frequencies of the same speaker. But you do not yet understand the cost of knowing. You try to ask him what that means, but your mouth doesn't work. He continues anyway. Each story is a contract, each truth a danger. In my time, we burned cities for miswritten omens. You are here now. You must read. But beware, some scrolls do not like to be remembered. You get the feeling he means you don't get to decide which stories you keep, or which ones keep you. And just like that, he's gone again. Only the throne remains. The library exhales, and the floating tablet crumbles into dust mid-air, like it was never there. You're alone. Except something else has shifted. In one of the alcoves, a torch flares to life, illuminating a passage deeper into the library. On the wall beside it is a single word newly etched. Proceed. Well, that's reassuring. Or not. But what choice do you have? You step through the torchlit passage, ducking slightly as the ceiling sags with time and humidity. The air here is thicker, almost syrupy, and the smell of wet earth and old parchment clings to your clothes like a second skin. Each step you take produces a soft squelch, not from anything visible, but it's probably best not to look down right now. The hallway curves unnaturally, as though the architecture was designed by someone who thought straight lines were too predictable. The light behind you fades. Ahead, something glimmers. A dull gold glow pouring from a chamber whose entrance is lined with carved symbols. You pause. The cuneiform etched into the door jamb writhes a little as you focus on it. Not metaphorically, actually writhes. You blink, twice, and the motion stops, replaced by a plain inscription in English. Knowledge may whisper, but memory screams. Great, encouraging stuff. You push the heavy door open and step into a circular room. At its centre, on a raised platform, sits a towering stack of clay tablets, each one slightly askew, like a messy pile of pancakes nobody dared touch. But the walls are the real spectacle. They're covered floor to ceiling with shallow niches, and every single niche holds a single tablet. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. It's not just a library, it's a whispering archive, and yes, it is whispering. You tilt your head and strain to listen. The voices are faint and papery, like dry leaves rubbing together in a breeze. But then one comes through clearly. He lied about the eclipse. The crops failed. He knew they would. You jump, your shoulder grazing a wall niche. A tablet clinks slightly in its cubby but doesn't fall. You're in what scholars now call the royal epistolary wing, though there's no official sign. This is where Ashurbanipal stored the letters. Some intercepted, others forged, many never meant to be preserved. Missives between generals, governors, astrologers, but the strangest ones, they came from ghosts. You pull one tablet from a low niche. The writing morphs into modern English as you read it silently. To my king I write from the shadows. The dreams do not stop. The fish speak and walk on land. The rivers bleed upward. I await your instruction. You blink. Another tablet nearby reads, The ghosts in the grain silos cry out in Sumerian. Do you still wish the harvest to proceed? Quirky tidbit. There's genuine archaeological evidence that Ashurbanipal's archives included accounts of haunted structures and agricultural omens. Mesopotamian scribes were often called upon to not only track grain supplies, but also document spectral phenomena. Yes, that was apparently part of the job description. You move deeper into the room. One section of the wall has been blackened by something. Fire? Mold? You touch the surface and it pulses faintly like the skin of a drum. A cluster of tablets here are cracked but still intact. Their scripts less formal, rushed. One shows signs of being rewritten 3 times, layers of erased text visible even through the grime. Historians still argue whether Ashurbanipal allowed dissenting accounts to exist in his archive, or if this chaotic section reflects a failed cover-up. One theory claims the king kept a hidden chamber for untrustworthy texts, versions of events he didn't endorse but couldn't quite destroy. and this might be that chamber. You slide out another tablet at random. Regarding the siege of Arata, our omens failed. The sky burned without warning, all were lost. Burn this tablet. Oops. Before you can react, the air thickens, tangible now, heavy like it's been holding its breath. One of the whispering voices gets louder, not yelling, but insistent. You read what was sealed, speak not the words, rewrite, rewrite. Then silence. The entire room seems to lean inward, and just when your nerves are ready to walk out of your skin, a section of the wall rotates. Yep, rotates, revealing a hidden chamber behind. Well, obviously you're going in. This new room is smaller, square. 4 sconces ignite as you step inside. At the centre sits a small desk carved from obsidian, sharp-edged and cold. On the desk, a stylus, a fresh clay tablet, and an inscription carved into the desk's edge. To record is to betray. To erase is divine. What kind of writer's motto is that? But the message is clear. You're meant to write something. You're not sure what, but your hand moves on its own, picking up the stylus. And before you can even hesitate, a sentence pours out of you. Something you didn't even know you remembered. He knew the flood would come. He told no one. You drop the stylus like it burned you. The writing on the tablet glows faintly, then fades. Somewhere deep in the wall, a low rumble begins. Did you just activate something? You turn back to the main chamber, heart pounding. The pile of tablets in the centre begins to shift, subtly, like it's breathing. A few slip from the top and clatter to the floor. Behind them, a dark, narrow stairway appears, winding downward into what looks like a bottomless pit of shadow. Because of course it does. Another whisper brushes your ear. This time it's not angry, it's tired. Down, scribe, down. The truth waits in the furnace. You pause at the top step. It's slick, smells like ash and damp straw, but there's no going back now. The chamber has already sealed itself behind you, and somewhere far below something just laughed. Not loudly, just enough to let you know you're expected. The staircase curves like a nautilus shell, each step descending deeper into a temperature shift so sharp your breath starts to mist in the air. At first, the walls are smooth stone, etched with repeating cuneiform phrases that seem to hum if you stare too long. But after 10, 20, maybe 30 steps, who's counting? The stone gives way to something darker, shinier. Obsidian? It reflects just enough of your own face back at you to be deeply unsettling. The air thickens again. It smells like scorched parchment and something else. Sweat. No, more like copper. You shake it off. Probably best not to analyse unknown smells in an ancient subterranean maze of cursed literacy. Finally, the steps widen and deposit you into a chamber that defies architecture entirely. It's huge. Bigger than any room should logically be underneath a crumbled palace. A vault, with arches of basalt so high they disappear into darkness. And in the centre, lit by floating embers that dance just a little too slowly, is a massive construction made entirely of baked bricks and smashed pottery. It looks like a kiln, or a throne, or both. And surrounding it, stacked in deliberate chaos, are piles of half-melted tablets, slabs stamped with characters so distorted they resemble claw marks. One twitches. You pretend not to notice. This is the Furnace Archive, sometimes referenced in fringe texts but long considered myth. A place where Ashurbanipal allegedly stored rejected or dangerous stories, records that were too unstable, too politically inconvenient, or simply too cursed to be trusted above ground. The problem is, these stories don't want to be forgotten. You walk closer to the kiln throne thing. Its front face bears a relief, the king himself seated with a stylus in one hand and a lion cowering in the other. That checks out. Ashurbanipal was known for hunting lions barehanded, but the lion here is whispering into his ear. Weird flex. Historians still argue whether this chamber ever physically existed. No archaeological evidence has confirmed a furnace archive beneath Nineveh, but certain ancient texts allude to it indirectly. A clay fragment discovered in the 19th century bears the phrase, "Stories burned are stories bound," which doesn't appear in any known canon. Most dismissed it as metaphor. But you're standing in the metaphor now, and it's not just metaphorical, it's animated. A brick crumbles underfoot as you step closer. There's movement in the walls. Pulses, like a sleeping animal's breath. Every few seconds, one of the half-melted tablets lets out a sound. not a word exactly, more like a sigh, as if the text is trying to reorganize itself. You squat near one and pick it up. The clay is hot to the touch. Not dangerously so, but wrong. It vibrates like it's trying to remember something. You watch the surface for a second, and the marks rearrange themselves into legible writing. He returned from the mountain, the sun was dead. His words turned the river to sand. Burn this tale. You drop it, naturally. It lands silently, as if cushioned by invisible fingers. Behind you, a new path reveals itself. The brick wall sloughs away like old skin, exposing a tunnel not dug but grown, the bricks twisting into archways that seem to pulse in rhythm with your heartbeat. A flickering shape appears at the far end of the tunnel. It's humanoid, sort of. A cloaked figure, face hidden, robe black and drifting like smoke. It holds a long stylus carved from bone and motions for you to follow. You take a breath, why not, and trail behind. The tunnel leads to another chamber, this one narrower and more geometric. Tiles cover the walls, each depicting a scene from Ashurbanipal's reign. Here, you learn what most schoolbooks skipped, like the fact that the king once demanded a siege be documented not by generals or scribes, but by artists, so that the emotional anguish of the enemy could be better understood. That's not strategy, that's performance art with a body count. One tile shows prisoners flayed alive while scribes record the screams phonetically. Another shows the king calmly sketching a lion mid-charge, unbothered by the blood. The cloaked figure points to a particular tile, Ashurbanipal standing before a pile of scrolls on fire, while shadows crawl away from the flames like wounded animals. You hear it before you feel it, a voice crawling into your ear, soft and dry. He burned the lies, but the lies lived. Suddenly the flames in the mural animate, just a flicker, enough to cast light across the entire chamber, revealing hundreds more tiles, each one an event, a version, an account that doesn't line up with official records. That's the kicker. You realize this isn't history, it's counter-history, the whispered underside of official narrative, all the versions that didn't win, and now they want to be remembered. The cloaked figure lifts its stylus and points to the floor. A familiar symbol glows faintly there, same as the one on the tablet you wrote in earlier. You crouch instinctively. Another clay slab is forming beneath your hands. This time, though, you don't have to write. The words arrive unbidden, etched into the surface as though your thoughts are being transcribed by the kiln itself. There were 2 Ashurbanipals, one ruled, one remembered. You don't know what it means, not yet. But the stylus-wielding figure nods solemnly, then dissolves, literally breaks apart into flecks of ash that swirl upward and vanish into the darkness above. A hush follows. Then, a whisper from deep inside the furnace chamber. Bring us the false story. That's not vague at all. You stand, and the walls begin rearranging themselves again, sliding into new configurations. The furnace groans behind you, and one brick near the top, red hot and thrumming, falls loose, revealing a passage bathed in a light you can only describe as molten honey. You have no idea where it leads, but you step toward it anyway, because the only way forward now is through someone else's lie. You duck into the golden tunnel and it's immediately hotter. Not unbearable, but just enough to suggest that whatever this passage was originally meant for, it wasn't human comfort. The light pulses like breath, casting long, oil-slick shadows that bend in ways shadows shouldn't. As you walk, the air begins to smell sweet, cloyingly so, like dried dates left in a tomb too long. The walls are smoother here, glazed in a way that reflects your face with strange warps, as if it's constantly aging, then reverting. One moment you look 10 years older, then suddenly 12, then, very briefly, not human at all. You try not to look again. The corridor ends in an arched entryway with no door, just 2 vertical slabs of obsidian framing a curtain of black silk that seems to suck in light. Carved above the arch is an inscription that reads, "Truth is not welcome at this table." Well, that's not ominous at all. You brush aside the curtain and step into what you immediately recognize as a dining room, or at least something pretending to be one. There's a long, low table set with clay bowls, metal goblets, and plates that look suspiciously like polished stone tablets. Every place is set for one, except one chair is occupied, and your heart sinks. It's not a person, It's a demon, not horns and tail Hollywood style. No, this thing is worse. It's too symmetrical. Its skin is the texture of leather that's been soaked, dried, then soaked again. Its eyes are painted on dots like those found on ancient idols. It smiles without moving. It sits perfectly still, head tilted, stylus resting gently in one hand, the other stroking what looks like a scroll made of stretched parchment. You don't want to know what it's made from. Sit, it says. You sit. The demon scribe gestures toward the bowl in front of you. It's filled with a mixture that looks like crushed dates, barley, and, oh great, ashes. You try to decline politely, but the bowl levitates half an inch off the table and leans toward your face. You take a bite. It tastes like regret. So, the demon says, its voice surprisingly calm, even warm. You've entered the furnace. You've read the glosses, the counter-truths, but you haven't yet learned how stories die. You nod because that seems like the correct move. Let me show you. It gestures again, and the scroll it's holding unfurls on its own. The writing pulses with heat. You lean forward and read the opening lines. On the night Babylon burned, the king smiled. It was his brother's fire, after all. Suddenly you're there, seated not at the table anymore, but on a balcony high above a city in chaos. Flames roar in the distance. Screams echo from the streets below. Below you, soldiers sack temples, tear down statues, and hurl scrolls into waiting pyres. And next to you stands Ashurbanipal himself, arms crossed, face lit by the inferno. Shamash Shumukin thought rebellion would bring him glory, he says. It brought him ashes. You know this story. Sort of. Historically, Ashurbanipal's brother, installed as king of Babylon, rebelled around 652 BCE. The war that followed was brutal. Babylon was besieged, starved, and eventually destroyed. But records disagree on what happened to Shamash Shumukin. Some say he died in battle. Others say he burned himself alive in the palace. Still others hint at something darker. Historians still argue whether Ashurbanipal planned the entire rebellion just to justify wiping Babylon off the map, a way to crush a rival and write his own version of history in one sweep. And now, the demon wants to tell its version. The scroll changes scenes. You're back at the table. Babylon's story is full of lies, the demon says, almost gently. Each copy contradicts the next. In one, the king weeps. In another, he laughs. In a third, he never existed. It offers you a goblet. You hesitate. It's ink, it explains. Old ink, the kind that remembers. You sip. It tastes like mud and metal. You see things you didn't ask for. Ashurbanipal's scribes arguing violently over how to phrase his conquest. One insists they include the cries of children. Another demands they delete all references to famine. We must preserve order, the high scribe says. You feel nauseous. You wipe your mouth. But when you look down, the goblet is full again. The demon leans in. You don't understand yet, it whispers. Every story here, the ones you fear, the ones you question, they're alive because someone fed them, a scribe, a king, a god, or a frightened servant desperate to keep his head. It taps the table twice. A new slab rises between you. This one is blank, save for a single phrase. He who eats the story owns its truth. That's you now, the demon says. You ate it. Wait, what? You try to protest, but the demon stands. Its robe unfurls behind it like smoke unraveling. It bows low, then slowly dissolves into the air particle by particle. The plates clatter, the bowls tip, the room shudders, and then begins to crumble. Not violently, almost politely. Like a structure that's finished its work. One stone tablet from the table slides across the floor to your feet. You pick it up. On it is carved, "Dinner is over. Dessert awaits below." A trapdoor opens beside you. A ladder descends into flickering blue light. Because of course it does. You lower yourself onto the ladder, feeling each rung flex slightly under your weight. The trapdoor closes above you with a whisper. No dramatic slam, just the soft certainty of sealed fate. The blue light below flickers erratically, like it's being filtered through water, or flame, or something else that doesn't quite behave. The descent is longer than it should be. Gravity starts to feel optional. The air smells like old ink pots and singed wool, and something in the distance is humming. A steady tone, just high enough to fray your nerves. At last your feet meet solid ground, though solid may be generous. The floor feels spongy, unstable. You don't dwell on it. This new chamber is oval-shaped, surrounded by rows of amphorae, each one sealed with wax and marked with ancient symbols. In the centre of the room is a long, narrow table with a strange setup, a reed stylus, a lump of unbaked clay, and a small glinting knife, and you know immediately you're being tested. A figure steps out of the shadows, not the demon from before. This one is thinner, human-shaped, but wrapped in scrolls like bandages. You can't see a face, just layers of script wrapped tight across skin. It moves like it's trying not to crinkle. "You will now take the test of the scribe," it rasps, voice dry as sun-bleached papyrus. 3 questions, 3 writings, 1 mistake, and you are rewritten. You don't love the implications of that. The figure gestures to the first task, a tablet with partial text, the rest blank. The words of Ea are incomplete. Finish the incantation. You stare at it. The existing lines read, "To summon protection, mark the stars, call the wind, speak the..." You hesitate. Speak the what? The mind? The name? The invoice number? You write, "Name of the forgotten flame." The scroll-wrapped figure pauses, then nods once. The clay hardens instantly. Challenge 1. Survived. The second task is worse. You're handed a tablet filled with symbols that don't belong. Greek letters, Egyptian hieroglyphs, even something that looks like binary code. "These are errors," the scribe says. "Correct the lie." You realize these are anachronisms, intrusions. But which ones? You choose carefully, smoothing over the false scripts and replacing them with cuneiform equivalents. You hesitate over one strange sigil, almost like a QR code, but your gut says erase it. You do. The figure watches. Another nod. 2 for 2. Third challenge. This time the figure gestures toward a blank clay sheet. Write your story. You blink. What story? The one that brought you here. The one that must be told. Oh, you write. It flows quickly. The arrival, the king, the voices, the fire, the dinner. As your stylus moves, you notice something strange. The clay is responding, solidifying mid-sentence. It accepts some phrases eagerly, others less so. You rewrite one line. The demon smiled kindly, and the clay ripples as if frowning. You finish. The figure takes the tablet gently, reads the surface, then places it in a glowing niche behind it. The niche seals. The humming stops. You may proceed, it says. A door slides open to your right. This one is made of dark wood, bound in copper, carved with dozens of tiny mismatched symbols. Some shimmer. One blinks. You try not to stare at that one. You walk through and immediately regret it, because the next room is full of reed styluses. Hundreds. No, thousands. Floating midair like a forest of needles, all pointing inward toward a central pedestal. On the pedestal is a single scroll sealed with tar. Above it, in glowing letters, the scriptorium of lies. Okay, this sounds promising. You step forward. The styluses follow you, their tips vibrating ever so slightly, as though eager to scribble on something. You approach the scroll and realize it's humming, not the room, not the pedestal, the scroll. You reach for it and every stylus in the room points directly at you. The scroll speaks without opening. You carry the weight of unfinished tales, you altered truths. Now you must read the one that reads you. You hesitate. You touch the scroll. It opens itself, and you read. Not a story. Your story. Every thought you've had since entering the library, every doubt, every choice, every line you wrote, even the moment you chose to erase the QR symbol. It's all here, written in a language you didn't know existed but somehow understand. And then the scroll asks, "Do you agree with this version?" What? This version? You realize. The scroll wants confirmation, or denial. But what happens if you disagree? One of the styluses inches closer to your face. The tip gleams. You nod. The scroll rolls itself shut. The stylus is lower. You exhale. Then, in the corner of the room, a panel opens, revealing yet another passage. Naturally. But before you move, the scroll speaks one last time. You pass the test. You're now a scribe. But beware, scribes do not choose what they remember. They are chosen by memory. You swallow hard and step into the next hall, which smells like something familiar. Charcoal, papyrus, ink, and fear. You step into the next hall, and the air changes instantly. Drier now, tinged with sulphur and the bitter tang of iron. It smells like an old forge, or maybe a battlefield long after the bodies have been cleared and only the weapons remain. The floor beneath your feet is no longer stone but hardened ash, compacted into a smooth, unnerving silence beneath your steps. You've entered the war shelf. That's not a metaphor. That's literally what the inscription above the archway reads, if you squint hard enough and accept that some of the symbols are shaped like swords. A wide, low platform stretches the length of the hall, stacked not with books or scrolls, but with broken weapons, helmets, and rusted pieces of armour. And among them, wedged like oddities, are tablets, thick ones, heavy, carved with blocky, urgent strokes. You lift one, it vibrates. Then it starts narrating, not in your voice, in his. I, Ashurbanipal, king of the world, smote Elam like a pestle crushes grain. Well then, you set it down, it keeps speaking. I shattered Susa's gates, I tore down its gods, I made their bones my ink. A second tablet chimes in, not in unison, but like an eager participant at a war poetry slam. They wept like cattle. I watched. This is uncomfortable, because the war records are boasting, and they're enjoying it. Historically, Ashurbanipal's campaigns were brutal. He launched vicious assaults on Elam, Babylon, and other neighbouring territories, often described with theatrical cruelty in the annals. One famous carving shows him reclining in a garden while his enemies' severed heads dangle from a nearby tree, a scene that would have made even Shakespeare flinch. But here's the thing, these tablets compete. They seem to one-up each other with escalating savagery. You move further down the shelf and something catches your eye. A tablet that's been deliberately buried beneath a shattered shield. You pull it free. Unlike the others, it's not bragging, it's whispering. Do not believe the song. The king wept after the flames. He walked alone through Susa and touched the burned stones. You stare at it. Now that's not in the official records. Historians still argue whether Ashurbanipal actually mourned the destruction of Susa, once a revered centre of culture. Some texts suggest remorse, others suggest he danced. This tablet seems to imply both. You lift another from the same pile. It contains a message clearly meant to be buried. He begged the gods for forgiveness. He offered his own tongue. They refused. You place it down gently. Something rustles in the corner. You turn, expecting another demon or scroll mummy or sarcastic sentient stylus. Instead, it's a child, maybe 10 years old, dressed in simple linen, eyes far too old. He points to a rusted dagger on the platform. You pick it up. There's something etched along the blade in deep, looping cuts, like someone carved the letters using another weapon. It reads, "This was truth once, then it was edited." The boy nods and vanishes. You now understand this isn't a shelf of war records. It's a museum of narrative violence. Every tablet has its own angle. Some praise, some condemn. Some contradict themselves within the same paragraph. You pick one up that starts with Ashurbanipal showed mercy and ends with, his mercy was a sword in disguise. You glance at the back. It's blank. So you write, he knew mercy was myth. And as soon as you inscribe the final character, the tablet melts, dissolving into smoke, which coils upward into the ceiling and disappears with a faint scream. Okay then, you back away, just in time for a wall panel to slide open, revealing a narrow corridor lit with flickering oil lamps. You step into it, and the war shelf disappears behind you, sealed without a sound. This new hall is quieter, cleaner, almost sterile. Until you spot a sign scratched into the wall, restricted, do not read, which is basically an invitation. You enter. It's a smaller room, shelves arranged in spirals, each cradling a single tablet. No labels, no order, just a quiet sense that everything in here is wrong in a very specific way. You choose one at random. It reads, "The gods lied, the stars were forged, the signs are fictions." Another reads, "This account has been corrected 17 times, it is now acceptable." You begin to realize these are not just war stories, they are revisions. You found the king's editing room. Every king gets to write history. But Ashurbanipal? He rewrote it. Constantly. Ferociously. Some scholars believe his scribes created 5, even 10 versions of the same battle report depending on the intended audience. Domestic, foreign, religious, celestial, each with its own spin. But this is the raw material, the drafts, the retractions, the lies that were so bold they needed to be locked away. A final tablet rests in the centre of the room on a pedestal made of bone-white alabaster. You touch it. The surface burns slightly. It reads, "The war never ended. It simply found quieter weapons." The lights dim. A heartbeat later, a doorway appears behind the pedestal. You don't wait for an invitation. You walk through, ears still ringing with the phrase "quieter weapons," because you suspect the next room is going to be anything but quiet. The door swings shut behind you without sound, yet the silence it leaves behind feels deliberate, like a pause in a very long sentence. This new chamber is colder. Not the kind of cold that bites, it's the kind that listens. The floor under your feet is polished basalt, dark enough to reflect the flickering sconces along the walls, but the reflections are wrong. They lag half a second behind your movements, like they're thinking it over before deciding to mimic you. Welcome to the Chamber of the Burning of Babylon, 2 versions. The walls curve outward, forming a near-perfect dome. Along the perimeter, 2 grand tablets are mounted side by side, each framed in gold. Above the left, an inscription reads, Version 1, The Victor's Truth. Above the right, Version 2, The Survivor's Memory. There's a bench between them, like the library expects you to sit, compare, and somehow decide. You sit. A wind brushes the back of your neck. The left tablet begins to glow. The script animates, its wedge-shaped characters reshaping into words you can understand without thinking. Babylon resisted the will of Ashurbanipal. Its king defied the stars. The gods withdrew. Fire was sent in mercy to cleanse the land. You nod. This is the official version. The royal inscriptions carved across palace walls and monuments for centuries. Babylon rose in rebellion, led by Ashurbanipal's own brother. The city was punished. Righteously, if you ask the victor. The visuals come unbidden. You see the Assyrian army storming the Ishtar Gate, arrows blotting the sky, streets choked with smoke, the great ziggurat collapsing in slow motion as flames lick up its side, and Ashurbanipal, serene, watching, detached. He isn't gloating. He looks tired. Then the right tablet ignites. The glow is dimmer, flickering, as though the tablet itself is hesitant to share. We prayed, and the stars turned away. Our king wept in the temple. The soldiers came anyway. Ashes buried the children before morning. And just like that, you're somewhere else. In a Babylonian courtyard, moonlight smeared with smoke. People crying, not from fear but confusion. A mother holding a broken tablet instead of a child. Scribal students trying to protect scrolls with their bodies. Fire climbing the temples. And over it all, a sound not unlike laughter, but not from joy, from disbelief. The 2 scenes fight for space in your mind. On the left, divine order, justice, the strong hand of a king correcting fate. On the right, chaos, grief, the haunted silence of lives undone without warning. Historians still argue whether the destruction of Babylon under Ashurbanipal was premeditated policy or emotional revenge. Some claim it was punishment for rebellion. Others believe it was fratricide disguised as divine sanction. Others still, fringe scholars mostly, suggest the entire rebellion was fabricated. A political narrative constructed to justify genocide. You feel the library watching you now, not just the room, the entire thing, waiting. Because it has a rule, stories must be chosen. You rise from the bench, but you don't move toward either tablet. Instead, your eyes drift to a third object, almost hidden, in a shallow alcove near the floor, a much smaller tablet, cracked, covered in soot. You crouch, brush it off, and read. Neither truth survived, only ash. Let that be the record. You sit back. A heavy breath escapes your chest. Of course, that's the real version, the only version, the one where memory and authority cancel each other out, where neither victor nor victim owns the ending, only the ash remains. The 2 main tablets dim simultaneously. The room exhales. A panel opens to your left. You follow it into a short corridor lined with scorched murals. The figures depicted are smudged, like the paint itself tried to flee. But one thing is clear, the themes repeat. Fire, falling, silence. At the corridor's end is a table. On it a single object, a sealed clay jar. Next to it a sign, medical wing. Contents, remedies and afflictions. Read carefully. You hesitate. You open it. Inside, a roll of tablets. You unfurl the first one. For fever of unknown origin, place crocodile dung upon the chest. Speak the names of the 6 healthy goats. Burn incense until the flames answer back. Okay, the next one. To encourage fertility, bury date seeds beneath the bed. Whisper the names of your ancestors. Consume the powdered bone of a newborn mouse, if available. That last part is doing a lot of heavy lifting with the phrase, if available. You realise quickly, this is not a medical archive, it's a theatrical production of health advice. Some of it actually aligns with real Mesopotamian healing practices. They did use livers for divination after all. And yes, crocodile dung was a known ingredient in ancient contraceptive suppositories. We are not making that up. You wish we were. Quirky tidbit. One of the tablets lists a cure for excessive reading, which includes rinsing the eyes with goat's milk and spending a week in darkness. Relatable. But underneath the humour, there's something deeper. The ailments listed aren't just physical. One tablet reads, "For sorrow that cannot be named, write it in clay, bury it at dusk. If it returns, it is not sorrow, it is memory." You sit with that one for a moment, because in this place, memory is more than recollection. It's alive. You leave the medical jar behind. Another path unfolds, this one lit with dim green lamps flickering like will-o'-the-wisps, and at the end, a stone bench, a scroll, the title, The Epic of Gilgamesh, and it's whispering your name. The scroll rests on the bench like it's waiting for you. Not just for anyone, for you. It knows you're coming. The light in this room is emerald tinted, and the air carries that earthy smell libraries get when they haven't been disturbed for centuries. Except this library has been disturbed. Constantly. By fire, by time, by memory, and now, by you. You hesitate, one hand hovering above the scroll. It's thick, heavier than it should be, wound tight with a braided cord that looks suspiciously like dried sinew. As your fingers graze the surface, the whispering starts. It's faint, rhythmic. Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh. And then your name, not in the voice of a narrator, in your own voice, like it's being read back to you. You unravel the cord and the scroll unfurls on its own with a snap of sudden motion, like a snake stretching awake. The first few lines are familiar, even if you haven't read them in years. He who saw the deep, the foundation of the land. And suddenly, you're not in the library anymore. You're in Uruk. The walls rise high above you, shining with fired brick and gleaming lapis inlay. You hear the distant shouts of merchants, the pounding of bronze tools, the laughter of children, and striding through it all is him, Gilgamesh, part god, part man, entirely too confident. He looks at you, no, through you, and for a moment it feels like he knows what you're doing here, that you're an intruder in his legend. "You've come to read my story?" he asks, not smug, curious, dangerous. You nod, and the city changes. Now you're running through forests with Enkidu, his laughter echoing like a drumbeat. Now you're standing on the edge of the cedar forest, the monstrous Humbaba's shadow falling across your feet like a storm cloud. And then, just as suddenly, Enkidu is dead. You're back in Uruk. Gilgamesh is on the floor, weeping over a clay tablet, not even pretending to be royal anymore. "He was my balance," he says, voice cracking, "and the gods took him." He turns to you again, and now his eyes burn with something deeper than anger or grief. Hunger. You think you understand death because you've read about it. He leans in. You think stories make you immortal? You don't answer, because he's not really asking. You're watching now as Gilgamesh begins his quest. Not for vengeance, not even for glory, but for understanding. You follow him through the shattered mountains, across the waters of death, to Utnapishtim, the ancient survivor of the flood, and just as he's about to grasp the secret of life everlasting, it's stolen from him, a snake, a simple snake, gone. Gilgamesh collapses. "I did all this," he mutters, "and for what?" That's when he looks up again, not at you this time, at the library, because now you're back, sitting in the green-lit room with the scroll open in front of you. Gilgamesh's voice lingers, quieter now. I failed, but they still read me. You glance down at the scroll and notice something horrifying. Your handwriting is on the last line. It's not metaphorical, it's literally your handwriting, scrawled across ancient parchment. It reads, "And still he wanders, seeking a version where he does not lose." Historians still argue whether Gilgamesh was a real king or just myth, a kind of ancient action hero template. But here, you see him for what he is, a loop. A story that refuses to die, one that's aware of its own retellings. You try to stand, but your knees give slightly. You're dizzy. The scroll is vibrating now, as if too many voices are trying to speak through it at once. A wall beside you opens. A voice, no body, just voice, calls out, "Come!" He is not the only one who speaks. You follow the sound through a corridor lined with fragments, broken tablets, torn scrolls, lines written and erased so many times they've become texture rather than meaning, and then you enter the room of misfiled realities. Immediately your breath catches, because this room doesn't feel like the others. It doesn't have the same ancient gravity or solemn air of knowledge. This room feels unsettled. The shelves are crooked, the texts mismatched. One scroll is written in 3 different languages. Another tablet reads from right to left on one side, left to right on the other. And the worst part, your name is on several of them. You pull one at random. It tells a story about someone, not you, but eerily close, who wandered into a library and began rewriting themselves the longer they stayed. Another scroll recounts a journey that hasn't happened yet, but stars you, features choices you haven't made, and ends in a room made entirely of mirrors. This room isn't just misfiled, it's leaking. Memories from other visitors, stories that don't know where they belong, even timelines that contradict each other. One scroll claims Ashurbanipal was murdered by a priestess. Another says he lived forever, becoming a spirit bound to ink and clay. A whisper to your left. Do you remember arriving? You turn. Nothing. But the question lingers. Do you? Because now a chilling thought rises. Maybe you didn't walk in here. Maybe you were always part of this place. The scroll you're holding shifts again. The ending changes, just a word here or there. But it's enough to rewrite everything. And then the voice returns. Keep reading. It's the only way to find out who you are now. You don't argue, because by now, you're not even sure who started this story, or whether you're the reader or the rewrite. The room of misfiled realities doesn't let go. Even as you try to leave, the scrolls cling to you, metaphorically at first, then literally. One wraps itself around your ankle like a papyrus vine. Another hovers in front of your face, its words shifting from Akkadian to English to something that might be binary code in cuneiform drag. You shake them off and press forward, deeper into the shelving chaos. The farther you go, the more impossible the room becomes. Tablets arranged in shapes instead of lines, a stack of scrolls spelling out a sentence. You read what should not be written. A doorway that loops you back to where you started twice. Finally, after what feels like hours or seconds, you step into a clearing. Yes, a clearing. In a library. There's grass under your feet now, soft and damp, lit by an unseen sky that smells like rain on old vellum. You're outside and inside at the same time. And directly in front of you is something magnificent, terrifying, and deeply absurd. A lamassu. Stone guardian of kings, protector of gateways. You know the type. Winged bull, human head, magnificent beard that probably gets more royal treatments than yours. Only this one is alive. Its wings twitch. Its eyes blink slowly. It breathes, nostrils flaring with a sound like wind through a canyon, and it's looking right at you. Genre? It asks. You freeze. Excuse me? Genre, the lamassu repeats, its voice deep and gravelly but oddly polite. Preferred reading category, choose. You hesitate. The lamassu lifts one eyebrow. Historical epic, tragic memoir, comedic scrolls of urban prophecy. We have everything except romance. That section burned. You stammer out an answer. Mystery? The creature nods, satisfied. Interesting. You walk a path of half-truths and misplaced certainty. Very well. It steps aside, revealing a small alcove tucked between 2 pillars of carved obsidian. In it, a single chair and a table, atop which sits a thick sealed volume with no title. You sit. The lamassu looms protectively behind you. You may now review your entry, it says. What entry, you ask? It gestures to the book. You open it, and there it is. Your story. Or rather, a story that features you, disturbingly well documented. Everything from your first step into the House of Ashurbanipal to the moment you read the Epic of Gilgamesh. But there are differences. Pages that show decisions you didn't make, choices you didn't consider, dialogues that never happened but could have. You flip to the most recent page. It's blank. Fill it, says the lamassu. With what? Whatever comes next. You grip the stylus that lies next to the book. The page quivers. You write, The reader paused, unsure if they were still themselves. The book responds. The words vanish, replaced with, Then again, most readers aren't asked to sit beside a lamassu. You glance over your shoulder. The winged beast smiles just slightly. Quirky tidbit. Lamassu were often carved with 5 legs, so they'd look stationary from the front and walking from the side. But this one seems to shift based on how you feel. Nervous? It looks menacing. Curious? Is downright handsome. One eyebrow has a perfect arch. You ask, Are you part of the library? The lamassu chuckles. The library's part of me. It snorts and turns away. You've seen the misfiled. You've heard the contradictions. You've witnessed Gilgamesh rant and Babylon burn twice, and yet you keep walking. You nod. Then you're ready for the next test. Another test? Oh yes, it says, already stepping aside. The library hasn't even begun to ask the real questions. It gestures to an archway now forming in the stone behind it. Symbols ripple across it like ink spreading through wet silk. They resolve into a phrase that feels more like a threat than an invitation. The fire that never happened. You step through, and you are immediately somewhere else, back in the ruins, but not ruins. Everything's intact now. The library is whole, newly built, walls gleaming, torches bright, scent of fresh-cut cedar in the air. Scribes bustle through the corridors, tablet stacks freshly stamped, ink pots clinking. You're in Nineveh, and it's alive. A scribe rushes past you and mutters, Get to the archives. The king has demanded a double copy of the Babylon texts. One for truth, one for legacy. You blink. A woman pushes a cart of tablets past you, all labelled Do Not Alter. You follow the flow of people through the bustling stone corridors until you're in a chamber you've already seen. But it's different. Brighter. Undamaged. Real. And there, in the centre of the room, you see a brazier. Not burning. Smouldering. Above it, a sign in cuneiform. Your eyes translate automatically now. To be forgotten, place here. And you realise this is where stories went to die. But then you remember something. You remember what the war scroll said, what the demon scribe whispered. He burned the lies, but the lies lived. Historians still argue whether Ashurbanipal truly preserved knowledge or destroyed just as much of it as he saved. Some believe he was a hero of history, others call him a manipulator of memory. But what if he was both? You walk toward the brazier, it begins to glow, and the chamber around you begins to shimmer, not with heat, with uncertainty. Because this fire, it never happened, but it left ash anyway. The glow from the fire that never happened seeps into the edges of your vision like a smudge on a dream. It flickers without flame, heat without source, and you stand there, watching the brazier breathe, not burn, and feel like you're witnessing a metaphor trying to become real. You reach out instinctively, but the warmth doesn't touch your skin. Instead, it seeps into your thoughts. A flood of contradictions hits you, histories that collapse upon themselves like poorly stacked clay tablets. One voice says, Ashurbanipal preserved wisdom for all future generations. Another insists he burned alternate accounts by moonlight, whispering apologies no one was meant to hear. A third voice, your own, asks, Do I even care which is true anymore? Behind you, footsteps, soft, careful. You turn to find a figure cloaked in red. No face, just a swirling blur, as if a gust of hot wind had been shaped into a person and wrapped in fabric. It doesn't speak. It merely points to the centre of the chamber. A new tablet is forming, rising from the stone floor like a bubble of molten earth. It cools instantly, inscriptions forming across its surface like veins. You step closer. The first line reads, This record is a lie. Below it, this lie is a memory. And then, this memory is the truth. You place your hand on the clay. It accepts you, and the world changes. The fire that never happened is now happening, slowly, like someone's testing it. The walls ripple with heat. The scrolls in their cubbies begin to twitch, some trying to crawl away, others leaning forward as if to watch. The entire library is awake now, and it doesn't like ambiguity. But ambiguity is all it has. You're no longer a visitor, you're a participant. And the building knows it. A deep vibration hums through the stone. You hear voices, not in words but in tones, like a choir made of stone dust and faded ink. It's not singing, it's remembering. A nearby mural animates. Scenes of Babylon's fall flicker across the surface. First, from the Assyrian perspective, soldiers disciplined, holy flames, justified retribution. Then, from the Babylonians' view, smoke-choked screams, desperate prayers, bodies buried beneath stone and shame. The mural warps. Both versions overlay. You can't tell them apart anymore. This room, this tablet, this fire, they don't care which version you believe. They just need you to choose. The red-cloaked figure steps beside you and holds out a stylus. You don't want to take it, because you know what this is. This is the moment you become the scribe. Not the reader, not the listener, the writer. You look at the tablet. It's offering a space, one line, one decision, and whatever you inscribe will become permanent. Above the space, a prompt. In the fire, I chose to preserve. You pause. The scrolls murmur behind you. The fire pulses, demanding your choice. You grip the stylus, hesitate, then write. The silence between the versions. The second your hand lifts, the fire exhales. A hot wind whooshes through the chamber, blowing out every torch and leaving only the soft red glow of the tablet, which now pulses like a heartbeat. The red-cloaked figure bows its head. Then it speaks for the first time, spoken like a scribe of ash. The walls begin to crumble, not violently, but like a sandcastle returning to the tide. The brazier collapses inward, revealing a spiral staircase made of black glass. Each step flickers with inscriptions, some in languages long extinct, some in emoji, don't ask, and one entirely in screaming. You step down. As you descend, the stairwell becomes darker, until only the glow of your decision remains behind you. At the base of the staircase is a door, not stone, not bronze, but wood. The first wooden door you've seen since you entered this place. Carved on it. Biography, cursed. You push it open, and walk into a room so cold your breath crystallizes in the air. A shattered tablet lies in the center of the floor, a candle burns beside it. On the walls, fragments of a story never told. A king's rival, exiled. A betrayal hidden in footnotes. A ghost returned to write his own ending. And you realize this is the ghost of the rival king, Shamash-shumukin, Ashurbanipal's brother, the man who tried to burn Babylon and who may never have died at all. The door creaks shut behind you, sealing out the library's whispers, but not the cold. The air in this chamber is sharp, like breathing in powdered bone. Every surface is dusted with frost, yet the candle on the floor burns steady, its flame a strange shade of violet. It casts long shadows across a cracked tablet, the only object in the room not frozen stiff. You step closer. The shattered tablet is arranged in a spiderweb of fragments, each piece carved in a script so frantic it looks like it was etched during a panic attack. At the center, a single word glows faintly. Shumukin, not Shamash-shumukin, not King of Babylon. Just Shumukin, as if the name itself has been stripped of ceremony, left bare like a wound. You kneel beside the tablet. As your hand grazes the edge of one shard, the violet flame flutters violently. A voice coils out from it, soft, worn, bitter. Finally, the chamber answers. The frost cracks, the walls breathe, and from the corners pieces of a man emerge. First his silhouette, then his voice, then his presence. Not whole, never whole. The ghost of the rival king exists here in fragments, like a myth held together by sheer resentment. You want the story, he says, the one he burned. You nod, carefully. He said I rebelled, that I defied the gods, that I deserved the fire, The ghost scoffs. But I was the heir, the elder, the one chosen by birth and temple. He, Ashurbanipal, was the clever one, the favourite, the reader. A pause. You can't rule a kingdom by reading it. His voice cracks. You must feel it. The frost crawls farther across the floor. A scroll behind you unravels itself. It's blank, waiting. The ghost notices. You've seen the misfiled truths, the edits, the smudged victories. You've read the Gilgamesh that talks back. He moves closer, footsteps silent on the ice. Now read mine. And suddenly, you're in Babylon again. But not as it burned, as it trembled. The final days before the siege, priests arguing in the temples, citizens praying under blackened skies, the rivers running sluggish with ash, and Shumukin, no longer a ghost, but flesh and fury, writing. Yes, writing. He isn't arming soldiers, he's documenting, pleading with history to remember his side. I didn't rebel, he mutters. I warned. I wrote. I asked the gods what to do. And what did the gods do? Nothing. Historians still argue whether Shamash Shumukin was a traitor or a scapegoat. The Babylonian Chronicle barely mentions him. Most surviving Assyrian texts describe him as mad, sacrilegious, and ultimately damned. But no Babylonian accounts remain. Not one. Except maybe this room. You look around. The walls are inscribed now. Scenes play out like memories burned into stone. You see a letter, half burned, addressed to Ashurbanipal. Brother, this isn't rebellion. This is resistance. To the empire. To your quills. To the idea that ink is always truth. The ghost watches you read. He kneels beside the cracked tablet and places his hand over the center. The pieces tremble, glow, and fuse. Just slightly. I couldn't win the war, he says, but I could haunt the footnotes. The flame flickers higher. I was erased, not slain. He hands you a fragment of his tablet. The inscription is brief. A ghost that isn't remembered becomes a demon. Quirky tidbit. Some fringe scholars believe Babylon's destruction wasn't just political, it was editorial. That Ashurbanipal removed his brother from history the way a scribe deletes a line, efficiently, permanently, without fanfare. Others claim Shamash Shumukin performed a ritual in his final moments, binding his name into the library itself. Tonight, that second theory feels a lot more plausible, because the ghost is still watching you. You think you're safe, he says, because you're a guest, a reader. He leans in, voice dropping to a whisper. But you're not reading me, you're rewriting me. And he smiles. Somehow that's worse than screaming. The flame leaps one last time and then dies. The room warms instantly, the frost recedes, and the ghost with it. But the tablet remains whole now, and next to it, a door opens. No flame, no fanfare, just a plain inscription scratched into the stone. Glossary of dangerous words. Because of course, you step inside. It's a tight chamber, low ceiling, scrolls arranged alphabetically, sort of. Every word here has a brief definition, and a consequence. You read a few. Ashu, noun. Loyalty laced with a blade. Reading aloud will invite contradiction. Zaku, verb. To erase without forgetting, causes fever. Meku, adjective. Unfinished, unknowable. Often mistaken for sacred. You pause. You find a scroll labelled with your own name. No definition. Just a note. Pending. A low hum grows in the floor, and then, behind you, a new whisper. The next word is yours. The whisper lingers like dust in your ear. The next word is yours. You turn around, half expecting another ghost or animated scroll to be waiting, but the room remains still. Too still. The kind of stillness that feels curated. Even your footsteps refuse to echo here, as if sound itself has been redacted. You stand in the middle of the glossary of dangerous words, surrounded by thousands of scrolls. Each one is labelled with a word too volatile, too uncertain, too loaded with potential to be left in everyday circulation. These aren't spells, they're definitions that do things when spoken. Think of them as linguistic landmines. You walk past a scroll titled Idzatu, meaning the smile that precedes betrayal. Below the definition is a small warning, usage may collapse alliances. Another scroll is labelled Enumtu, meaning a memory spoken aloud that alters the speaker's future. The ink shimmers in a way that suggests it would prefer to remain unread. One scroll floats just above the others, rotating slowly. You pluck it from the air. Kelubu, noun. A truth that devours weaker truths. Must be sealed after reading. You put it back quickly. Historians still argue whether Ashurbanipal invented these dangerous words or merely catalogued them. Some ancient sources refer to the list of sealed meanings that only high scribes and the king were allowed to access. Others claim these were linguistic experiments, proto-magic meant to weaponize knowledge itself. After all, if you can rewrite a city's history, you can erase it from memory. And what's more powerful than that? You wander deeper into the room and notice the lighting has changed. A low amber glow now pulses along the floor, revealing a new object. A podium. Atop it, a thick stone slab with a single stylus resting beside it. The slab bears an unfinished inscription, definition pending. You know immediately what this is. It's asking you to define the next dangerous word. Your stylus hand twitches, you hesitate, then you begin to write. Thesmu, noun. The moment you realise the story you're in is not being told by you, but by something older, watching, remembering, and waiting for you to forget. As soon as you finish the last wedge stroke, the slab shudders. The definition glows, then vanishes, absorbed, filed, accepted. Somewhere in the room, a scroll rolls itself shut with a satisfied snap. A low chuckle, feminine, amused, ancient, echoes through the chamber. You're not sure if it's approval or mockery. Then a wall splits open. You step through. The next chamber is dimly lit, its floor composed of clay tiles shaped like eyes. Each one stares upward as you walk across them. No blinking, no looking away. They want to see where you're going, or where you've been. Ahead, another arch, carved into its curve, the room that catalogues you. You already regret this. You walk in and immediately feel naked. Not physically, conceptually. The chamber is circular and silent, filled with shelves. But these aren't the grand towering archives of history. These are short stacks, personal stacks, yours. You approach the nearest shelf and see a tablet labelled Step 1. You enter the House of Ashurbanipal. The next one, Step 3. You hesitate before reading the dangerous word. You glance upward. There's a lot of steps. Each tablet chronicles a moment since you entered this place. But they're not passive records. They comment, annotate, judge. You pick up one that reads, Step 12. You told yourself you weren't afraid of libraries. You lied. Another one practically snickers. Step 27. You touched the flame you were warned not to, then pretended it didn't hurt. You shuffle past tablet after tablet, embarrassment curdling somewhere deep in your stomach. These aren't just observations, they're edits. The library is revising you. You turn to leave, but the door is gone. Figures. Then you see a final pedestal in the centre of the room. Upon it, a glowing slab. You approach. Its title reads, Predicted Steps, 80-100. The future. You hesitate. There's a question carved below the header. Do you want to know? No stylus this time. Just a yes or no touch plate. Your hand hovers, and then you do something unexpected. You step back, because deep down you realise something critical. The only power you have left is not knowing. And with that resistance, the door reappears. You walk through. As the room that catalogues you disappears behind you, one final whisper follows. You have deviated. Good. You're getting used to doors closing behind you. This one seals with a soft thud, like a librarian gently returning a particularly unpleasant volume to the shelf. Ahead, the hallway is dim, lit only by flickering glyphs etched into the walls, floating phrases, shifting quotations from the earlier parts of your journey. He knew mercy was myth. A ghost that isn't remembered becomes a demon. The next word is yours. They glide beside you as you walk, echoing your steps like a personal chorus of consequences. And just as the tension begins to feel manageable, the air thickens. Again. But this time it's different. There's no ash, no fire, no musty scroll scent. Just the scent of cedar. Fresh, clean, almost holy. You've entered the Chamber of Echoes where stories go to be judged. At least that's what the inscription says, carved above a massive stone gate. This is where the king listens. You step forward. The gate groans open without a touch. And there he is, Ashurbanipal, again. But not the version you saw earlier. Aloof, scholarly, regal. No, this one is more conceptual, larger than life, literally, 10 feet tall, composed of smoke, ink, and flaking gold leaf. His eyes are blank, carved from glowing onyx. His hands rest on a massive stone tablet that seems to breathe beneath his fingers. "You return," he says, and his voice is a chorus of whispers bound in leather bindings. "I have watched." You glance around. The chamber is circular, high-ceilinged, and entirely silent save for his voice. Along the walls, tablets inscribed with your decisions, every deviation, every moment you chose. You've read the dangerous words, touched the false fire, rewritten a ghost. He leans forward. But are you a storyteller, or merely a thief of memory? You start to speak, but he waves a hand and the room goes dark. A floating clay tablet glows in front of you. It contains your own handwriting. Thesmu, the word you created. Ashurbanipal studies it. "A good word," he says. "Heavy, unstable, real." He gestures to the walls. More of your entries appear. Your edit to the Babylonian destruction. Your silence in the room that catalogues you. These acts are not passive. They shape. He rises, and the ground trembles. You must understand, this library is no archive. It is not storage. It is engine. Every version you read, every contradiction you tolerated was a gear shifting, a wheel turning. Now the machine demands your conclusion. He raises his hand and a pedestal emerges from the floor. On it, a fresh clay tablet, unmarked. A stylus rests beside it, glinting with a faint blue sheen. "This," he says, "is your final story. You will write it here. Not from memory, not from record, but from intention. What should survive?" The room stills. Even your heartbeat sounds distant. "What if I refuse?" you ask. Ashurbanipal smiles, and it's the first expression that feels entirely human. "Then the library will write you." You approach the pedestal. You don't sit. You simply begin. And the words come, not quickly, but cleanly. No embellishment, just truth, as you understand it now. You write about stories that resist endings, about versions that live in the cracks, about contradictions that aren't mistakes, but signatures. You finish the final line. The truth is not the answer, it is the argument. The tablet seals itself. Ashurbanipal nods once, then fades, not in a blaze of glory, but like dust being exhaled by a breath too ancient to name. The chamber dims, a new path appears. This one is lined with golden light. You step into it and almost laugh, because the corridor ends at a glossary, not just any glossary. The glossary, the one you ignored earlier, or skipped, or maybe you never saw it until now. Words stretch endlessly here. Every term you encountered, every dangerous phrase, every invented route and fictional past. But there's something odd. Many of the definitions have changed. Where once Ashu meant loyalty laced with a blade, it now reads, an act of devotion distorted by too much time. Where Meku once meant unknowable, it now reads, the necessary incompleteness of memory. The library has adapted. To you, quirky tidbit? In Assyrian scribal schools, it was believed that every reader subtly rewrote a text simply by reading it. The reader's soul interacted with the ink. No two readings were ever the same. What was once called flawed memory was seen as contribution. You reach the end of the glossary and find one final word. Ashurbanipal. No definition, just a blinking cursor, waiting. You don't write anything, not yet. You step through the final archway, and the silence greets you like an old friend. The arch behind you closes, not with a slam but with a sigh, like the last page of a book folding shut. The silence that follows isn't empty, it's watchful. You've entered a room that doesn't announce itself, has no title carved into stone, no glowing inscriptions or flaming scrolls, just space. And at the centre, a long table. Laid out before you are two things, a stylus and a blank clay tablet. Familiar by now. But flanking them are two shelves filled with tablets that, unlike everything else in the library, are strangely boring. No flickering words, no haunted inscriptions, just titles. The official account, the accepted account, the public account. You feel it immediately. These are the versions people wanted to remember, the tidy ones, the ones that fit neatly into a summary paragraph or a school curriculum. But across the room, there's a much smaller shelf. dusty, uneven, its titles, the suppressed account, the retold account, the rejected draft. You pick one up. Its surface is brittle, cracking at the corners, but the story is vivid. He did not ride into battle. He hid in the archives. Victory came not from blood, but from red ink and silence. You check the official version of the same event. It reads, "The king led the charge personally, his spear piercing the hearts of traitors." Both are labelled Assyrian victory at the river Ulai. Both are so different, they might as well come from separate planets. You glance at the blank tablet on the table. A new inscription appears across the top. Reconciliation draft. You may begin. You take the stylus. For a moment, you think back to the glossary, to the room that catalogues you, to the demon with the dinner menu of regret, to Gilgamesh, furious that his ending was out of his hands. You take a breath and begin to write. The scribes could not agree, so they preserved all versions and left the reader to decide which scars to believe. You press the stylus down harder. Ashurbanipal knew history was a library, not a monument. The tablet warms beneath your hand, then cools. The text sets, permanently. Another doorway appears, not grand, not glowing. Simple wood, like a cottage door. Warm candlelight glows on the other side. You step through, and find yourself in a chamber that could only be described as cozy. Shelves of gently glowing tablets line the walls, but they don't move or whisper. Instead, they just rest. The floor is layered with old rugs. There's a kettle steaming on a low flame, and a chair, wide, worn, with a blanket draped over the back. A tablet rests on the seat. You sit. The tablet turns warm in your hands and begins to glow. It doesn't speak. It waits. And when the words appear, they're yours. This is the story of a reader who came to the library of Ashurbanipal and left a part of themselves behind. Not because they had to, because they understood. Stories must cost something. You feel it then, not dread, not fear, just a kind of gentle ache, the way you feel after closing a book that changed you. The sense that your thoughts are no longer fully yours. They've been updated. Quirky tidbit. In Mesopotamian belief, a story told aloud could summon or dismiss a spirit. They thought that narrative had physical weight. It could heal or haunt. You place the tablet back on the chair. The kettle whistles softly, and in the corner you notice something odd. A scroll is writing itself. Your name, your path, your definitions, your deviations. You walk to it, watching your story record itself in real time. Then you notice a second scroll forming beside it. Blank, but titled Next Reader, because you weren't the first, and you won't be the last. A passage opens to your right. You step through it into a room lit only by starlight. You're back in the ruins now, the real world. The sky above Nineveh is vast and unfeeling, the stones quiet. But in your hand, a shard of tablet, the one you never wrote on, the one labelled Ashurbanipal, still blank, still blinking, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to define him. You smile and leave it there, on the altar of ruins. Because not all stories need conclusions, some just need to be left open. The night air tastes different now, cleaner somehow. As if something old has been exhaled at last and you're breathing in what's left. The ruined walls of Ashurbanipal's palace stretch around you like a broken sentence. And yet, there's something vibrant still pulsing beneath the silence. You're not out. Not really, because just as you turn to leave the courtyard, a single stone slides beneath your foot. You don't fall, but the world around you does. The ruins flicker, shift, and rebuild. Not fully, just enough. The cracked bricks restore themselves. The torches reignite, and once again, you are pulled back into the library, not by force, but by invitation. A final wing, it seems, has opened. This one bears no inscriptions, just a single sigil hovering above the arch, a stylized eye with an ink droplet for a pupil. You step through. Welcome to the room of retellings. At first it looks familiar. The same scribes' benches, the same wall niches, but instead of tablets, each cubby contains something stranger. Copies of stories you've already seen, only changed. There's the Epic of Gilgamesh, but now Enkidu doesn't die. Instead, Gilgamesh chooses mortality so they can grow old together, quietly. There's the war log from the River Ulai, but this time the king sends diplomats, not spears. Babylon still stands. Its gates open, its libraries merge. These aren't records, they're rewrites. You run your fingers over a scroll labelled Alternate Ending 3, Ashurbanipal Abdicates. Inside, a younger brother, not Shamukin, but someone else entirely, takes the throne. The scroll reads, "In this version, the king chooses obscurity over empire. He becomes a gardener. He teaches children to read. No one remembers his name, but the soil does." You find yourself smiling. Not because it's more true, but because it's more possible. Even false stories can carry something real. Historians still argue whether the room of retellings ever existed, or whether Ashurbanipal's scribes merely passed down a tradition of hypothetical revisions, like fan fiction for kings. One fragment discovered near Nineveh reads, "The tale must be told again, or it was never truly told." You walk deeper into the room, where a single desk waits. It bears 3 tablets. Each is titled simply, "The Ending They Know." The ending you know. The ending that knows you. Naturally, you go for the 3rd. The tablet is blank, of course, but not for long. Words form slowly, not your words, not even the libraries. It's as if the room itself is reaching into your memories, stitching phrases together from things you forgot thinking. You entered out of curiosity. You stayed out of confusion. You return now because this place has your rhythm. You trace the surface. The tablet grows warmer, then, abruptly, cold. A figure steps out from behind the desk. You recognize him. It's Ashurbanipal, but not the towering ghost, not the glimmering king of whispering conchole eyes. Just a man. Plain robe, clay-stained hands, beard streaked with grey, tired eyes. He nods to you, then speaks. "We've written everything." You don't answer. He shrugs. But it's never enough, is it? You shake your head. He places a fresh tablet in your hand. "This is the last one," he says. "For real this time." You don't believe him, but you take it anyway. As you hold it, it fills itself with words, lines you didn't write but understand. Some stories do not ask to be told. They ask to be endured, rewritten, misshelved, repeated, and occasionally forgiven. You look up. Ashurbanipal is gone. In his place, a mirror. You step toward it, but it's not your face you see. It's the faces of everyone who's ever walked this library. Some terrified, some awestruck, all changed. You see Gilgamesh, Enkidu, Shamukin, the demon scribe, the scroll-wrapped examiner, the Lamassu, even the child with the dagger etched in his palm. You see yourself, as you were, as you've become. The mirror ripples and vanishes. Only the tablet remains. You slide it into an open space on the shelf. It fits. The room sighs, pleased. And just like that, the library begins to fall away again, not in destruction, but in relief, like a great breath being let go. The walls unravel into ink, the shelves dissolve into script, and you step out, back into the night, for real this time. The sky is still there, the stones of Nineveh still cool beneath your feet. But something's different, you know it, even if you can't explain it. You glance down, your hands are stained, with clay. You don't wash the clay off your hands. You could. There's a small spring bubbling nearby, likely fed by some ancient underground channel that once served the palace baths. The water is clear, cold, inviting, but the clay, soft, dry, the colour of old parchment, belongs there now, like you've been marked not as a visitor, but as a footnote. You look up. The stars over Nineveh are sharp, watching. No clouds, no moon, just a canopy of blank parchment waiting to be inscribed. And for the first time since entering the House of Ashurbanipal, you wonder if the sky itself is part of the archive. Maybe it's not just above you, maybe it's recording you, and maybe, just maybe, you're okay with that. But the library isn't finished yet. A wind stirs the gravel at your feet and reveals something round, half buried, a clay seal. You brush it off and turn it over. On one side is a symbol you recognize, a Lamassu, wings raised, stylus in hand. On the other, a single phrase pressed deep. Ashurbanipal appears, sort of. Oh no, the ground below you warms again. You don't fall, but you don't stay still either. The terrain around you distorts like glass in heat. The ruins rebuild, just a bit, not entirely, just enough to remember themselves. A throne appears where there was only rubble, cracked, uneven. The cushion is missing, but the shape is unmistakable, and on it, yes, he returns. Not the man, not the ghost, just the idea of Ashurbanipal, a presence, shifting in and out of physical coherence, sometimes robes, sometimes swirling ink, sometimes bearded, other times faceless, eyes like burnt gold, voice like turning pages. Back again, he says, not unkindly. Even after the mirror, you don't reply. You just nod, respectfully, warily. He smiles, or perhaps he generates the suggestion of a smile. You're not the first, he continues, and you won't be the last, but you, like so many, arrived with the same question. You wait. He leans forward, the air thickening like syrup. Do I remember the stories, or do the stories remember me? You hesitate. Both. Correct, his voice warms. But the real question is, do you remember the version where I never existed? And suddenly, the world glitches. Just a flicker. You see Nineveh with no Ashurbanipal, a library built by committee, a kingdom ruled by bureaucrats, no flame, no whispered scrolls, just cold, efficient record-keeping. It is terrifying. I had to write myself in, he admits. I had to become history. He rises from the throne, no footsteps, just motion, and walks toward you. He's taller now, or maybe you're smaller. Either way, it feels appropriate. You're thinking about how much of this is real, he says. Yes. Good. He circles you once. You feel his gaze pass through your skull like a stylus searching for soft clay. You want to ask if the scrolls were haunted, if Shumukin was really buried alive, if Gilgamesh talked back. You wait. He stops. But those aren't the questions that matter, he whispers. The real question is... He leans in so close, his voice is inside your mind. What did you leave behind? You open your mouth. Nothing comes out. Because suddenly you realize you did leave something behind. A sentence, a word, a hesitation, a refusal, a whisper. Something in that library still carries the trace of you. Ashurbanipal nods as if reading your thought in a margin. Then you understand, he says. You're not just a reader anymore. He steps back. You're a version. You blink and he's gone. So is the throne. The ruins return, quiet, crumbling, honest. And at your feet lies one more tablet. You pick it up. It reads, "To appear is not to exist, but to be remembered? That is enough." You hold on to it, because it's yours now. The stars are still overhead, but they feel farther away now. Not distant in a cosmic sense, just uninterested. As if they've turned their gaze elsewhere, satisfied that you've passed whatever invisible test they were observing. You stand in the dust of Nineveh's ghost, tablet in hand, feeling the weight of the words etched into it like they were written on your bones instead. To appear is not to exist, but to be remembered. That is enough. You run your fingers over the inscription again. It's smooth now, permanent, and then, like an afterthought, the tablet vibrates. Barely. Just enough to draw your attention to a symbol carved into its bottom edge. You hadn't noticed it before. An open eye, same as the one you saw above the room of retellings. But this time, the pupil isn't a drop of ink. It's a mirror. You look into it, and for a split second, you don't see yourself. You see the library. All of it. Every room, every contradiction, every whispered version of history, of memory, of myth. And somewhere inside it, your story is shelved, labelled, annotated, but unfinished, because something is still missing. The image fades, but the sensation lingers. You need to tell something. You just don't know what yet. As if on cue, a breeze stirs the ground around you, not natural wind. It carries the scent of dust and ink, and you know exactly what that means. The library is not done with you. You turn. There's a door in the middle of the courtyard, standing upright. No frame, just a wooden door, battered and ancient with a handle that looks suspiciously like a reed stylus. You step through, and immediately the air goes thin. You're in a vault. But not for gold, for endings. The room is enormous, cavernous. silent. At first glance, it's empty, but then you begin to notice them. Faint outlines in the floor, arranged like gravestones or file drawers. Each one is marked with a single word, not names, not titles, just themes. Regret, mercia, power, erasure, hope. Each tile is a possible ending. Each one calls to you in a different voice. You kneel at one marked erasure. The stone shifts beneath your hand. A vision floods your mind, a version of your journey where you turned back at the entrance. Never read the first scroll, never met the demon or dined on ashes, never listened to Gilgamesh scream or watched Ashurbanipal glitch into myth. And with that vision comes a sensation. You would have forgotten it all. Not just the library, yourself. You step back, shaken. You move to the next. Mercy. The floor offers a different version. You freed Shamukin. You burned the room that catalogues you. You refused to define any words, and because of that, the library fell silent, but gentle, passive, sleeping. In that version, you live peacefully, but the story forgets you. Next tile, hope. Here, the library becomes a school. Stories aren't locked up, they're performed. Every visitor contributes a chapter. Every contradiction is welcomed as a lens, not a flaw. But you never leave. You become the librarian. And the last one, power. This one is dark. You rewrite everything. Erase Ashurbanipal. Insert yourself. History bends. Reality follows. The library obeys. But you forget the original version. And without it, your kingdom is hollow. You stand in the middle of the vault, dizzy with options. None of them feel quite right. You return to the center. A new tile is forming, unmarked. You kneel beside it. The stone pulses. And in your mind, a whisper. The ending is the part that remembers you. You press your hand to it. The stone accepts. And a voice. Ashurbanipal's, or yours, or the library's, or maybe all of them, says, "Then tell it gently." A stairway opens beneath you. You descend without hesitation, because it's not a fall this time, it's a conclusion. The staircase curls downward like a script too delicate to be fully read. No torches, no glowing glyphs, just a faint hum, like breath held for centuries. Your feet make no sound, yet the steps feel alive, warm under your soles, as if the stone remembers being fire. You descend through silence until it stops being quiet and becomes something heavier, expectant. The kind of stillness found in the moment before someone turns a page. And then you arrive. You step into a room that feels like the space between heartbeats, the ending that refuses to end. It's not carved into stone this time. The name just exists here. Known without needing to be told. The chamber is circular, infinitely wide, yet barely large enough for you. Its walls are mirrors, thousands of them, all tilted slightly inward. No reflection matches. Some show you older, some younger, some with a crown, some weeping into your hands. One mirror isn't a mirror at all, it's a window. Inside it, you watch yourself, still in the scriptorium, struggling to choose a version of Babylon's fall. Another mirror shows you walking into the room of dangerous words, then vanishing. Another shows you never entering the library at all. These are endings, your endings, and they all exist, simultaneously. This room doesn't ask you to pick one. It asks you to acknowledge that you already did, every time you move forward. Said yes, said nothing, rewrote a truth, refused a definition. But now comes the cost. You walk to the center of the room, a pedestal rises, a tablet lies upon it. Its surface is perfectly smooth. You recognize it immediately. It's the one you never finished, the one from earlier, the one labeled Ashurbanipal. Still blank, still waiting. You pick up the stylus and this time it doesn't vibrate, doesn't heat. It just rests, like it knows the weight of this moment. You think back, to the ghost brother who wouldn't stay buried, to the library's whispering contradictions, to the demon who dined on omens, to the mirrored faces in the room that catalogues you, to the readers who will follow, and you write, slowly, deliberately. Ashurbanipal was a story that refused to end, so he rewrote the world until it accepted that. You lift the stylus. The tablet doesn't glow, it absorbs and cracks. Just a single, clean fracture down the center, like it's finally relaxed. Behind you, the mirrors shiver. One by one, they go dark, except one. The one in the center, It doesn't show you. It shows the library, empty, sleeping, waiting. A single sentence carved across its grand arch. Here, even memory is kept on a leash. And beneath it, a new phrase. But the leash is made of words. The mirror fades, and the pedestal lowers. A door appears in the floor. You take the final descent. It is quiet here, utterly still. No lights, no scrolls. Just a long hallway of names etched into the walls. Names you recognize. Scribes, kings, readers, versions. And at the very end, your name, freshly carved, still wet. You place your palm against it. It accepts you. The wall opens, not into fire, not into darkness, but into a gentle dusk. The library is gone. You're in the fields outside Nineveh. Crickets hum. The ruins are truly ruins again. No whispers, no doors, just stars, just silence, just you. You look at your hands. No clay, just skin. But you remember how it felt, and so does the library. Wherever it is now, the breeze is soft, real. Nothing ancient coils behind it. No voice rides the wind, just the ordinary hush of night outside a forgotten palace. And yet, every grain of dust on your clothes, every echo in your bones, every beat of your heart whispers one unshakable truth. You're not who you were. You left the library, but the library didn't leave you. You walk forward across a cracked stone courtyard that, hours or lifetimes ago, had been the library's threshold. The once glowing archways are now lifeless husks. The inscribed lamassu is just stone again, cold, still, silent. But you remember when it winked. You reach a broken column and sit, letting the night settle over your shoulders like a cloak. The air is warmer now, familiar, but something clings to your chest, not heavy, just present. You reach into your pocket, of course it's there. A shard of the tablet, the one you cracked, the one that once bore the name Ashurbanipal. It's no longer blank. A single line is etched into its surface, so faint it almost isn't there. The end is not the end, it's the hand that turns the page. You smile. You don't know who wrote that. Maybe you did. Maybe the library did. Maybe it was already written before you ever stepped through its door. Quirky tidbit? In one surviving scribal manual from Mesopotamia, there's an unfinished sentence on the final tablet. Just 3 cuneiform signs. Scholars still debate what it was supposed to say. Some think it was a copying error. Others believe it was intentional, a sign that no story is ever truly finished. That silence is just a space for the next voice to enter. And now, you realize that's your voice. Because even though your feet have touched ground again, even though your heart no longer beats in time with breathing walls and blinking tablets, you know the truth. You are a story now. One shelved somewhere beneath the archive. One whispered by the wind through broken bricks. One waiting to be read, or rewritten, or misfiled. You look to the horizon. The first line of dawn bleeds into the edge of the sky. Time to leave, not because you've escaped, but because the library has given you back to the world. Not as a reader, not even as a scribe, but as a page. A door creaks open somewhere behind your thoughts. You don't turn around, you just walk forward, because there are other stories now, other readers, and the library, it remembers them all. It will remember you too, always. And now, the story settles. The stone walls crumble gently behind your thoughts, the whispers fade into soft echoes, and the library's breath grows quiet. Whatever you carried in with you, curiosity, fear, confusion, wonder, it's lighter now, not because you dropped it, but because it was translated into something else, into memory. Let yourself rest here. Breathe slowly. Feel your fingers unclench, the tension slide from your shoulders. You're not holding onto cuneiform tablets anymore. No more choosing between versions, dodging demon archivists, or whispering words that rewrite you. There's just you. And the quiet. Remember the lamassu? Its question was simple. What's your favourite genre? Maybe tonight the answer is this. Stories that wander, that challenge, that don't offer a clean bow on top. The kind that ask you to lean in, to participate, to risk being seen. Because stories like that don't end. They just wait. For the next reader. For the next definition. For the next gentle breath. So rest now. in the soft weight of what you've just carried. Let the ruins settle in your chest like stardust, and know that somewhere, beneath stone, beneath silence, beneath time, a part of you sits on a shelf, shelved, but never forgotten. Now dim your thoughts like you dimmed your lights. Let the final word be a whisper, and sleep, 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 and sleep.